This is the family that God's given me, and a lot of the reason that I'm doing what God has asked me to do is because of them. I realize that the America they're being handed is not the same America I was handed 50 years ago. And so, and it's not going in the right direction. Now, I think what we're going to do here is we're going to show the trailer real quick, a short version of the first trailer, then I'll talk about that a little bit, then a short version of the second trailer, and I'll talk about that, and then kind of wrap up with some key things that aren't really in either movie, and then we'll do the question and answer time and things like that. So this is there a way to shut these lights off? This row? Yeah. Just, I think you'll be able to see the screen better. Just this, yeah, perfect. So this is a little trailer for the first film. How many of you have seen the first film?
Mom.
Okay, about half. Okay. Okay. No, I don't have one. Thank you. All right, so here's this.
Hello. In the traditional motion picture story, the villains are usually defeated. The ending is a happy one. I can make no such promise for the picture you're about to watch. The story isn't over. You and the audience are part of the conflict.
More human beings were slaughtered in the 20th century than all previous centuries combined.
We're talking a congressional record, 135 million dead.
Their entire purpose was to detach our culture from any moral anchors whatsoever.
You look at the changes in America since 1960, perhaps. The whole culture has been transformed.
They're coming out of the belief that the village should raise the child. The village means the government.
They have deliberately destroyed the American family, understanding that's the foundational block that builds a society.
We've come from Norman Rockwell's America to Hugh Hefner's America.
If we lose the Judeo-Christian framework, we're lost forever.
The left wants you to think that the cultural changes that have taken place in America since the 1960s have done nothing but progress us forward toward a brave new world.
They look at what holds society together, they understand it, but they don't want that. They want change, and they will subvert and rot every good and decent thing we believe in, because they have a vision for a new society, and that must mean the replacement of the old society.
This film will show that the brave new world they seek is nothing more than the failed policies and ideologies of the communism that enslaved over a third of the world's population during the 20th century. It will show that most people on the left aren't communist, just the useful idiots Lenin spoke of, being used to promote a socialist agenda, which is the first and necessary step toward communism.
They basically try to say that the state itself is ultimate, that there's nothing, no law higher than the state, and if there's no law higher than the state, there's no appeal against it.
History has proven beyond any doubt that the free enterprise that freedom produces provides more for anyone willing to work than any other system. So why would the left still be pushing their socialist agenda on us? I mean, it's really just microwave communism. There's only two possibilities. They're either ignorant or they're evil. From my investigation over the last 2 years into what has caused America's drastic decline, I'm sorry to say the left won't be able to use the ignorant card. They've left too much evidence of their agenda in their books, articles, and speeches. No, America has an enemy that is getting very close to accomplishing its plan of destroying the greatest country in all world history.
Once people figure it out, they're going to do what people everywhere do. They're going to start protesting, and they're going to start revolting. And when that happens, that's when the powers that be feel threatened, and they use the power that they have.
So that's kind of a little clip of the trailer of that first film. And so a little background on that, why I made that film. I was a representative in Idaho, and as I started to study what was going on, I realized there seemed to be a very much of a purposefulness behind things. It wasn't just out of ignorance or by accident. It was just clearly like things are going on here. And so one of the things I came across was a gentleman gave me this list of goals. How many of you ever heard of the 45 current communist goals from 1958? They were written in a book called The Naked Communist by Cleon Skousen. And an older gentleman, as I was writing some letters to the editor as a representative about what was going on and things I had done and just the purposefulness of the collapse of our culture, he said that's nothing new. That's been going on for a long time, and it was all written in a book in 1958. And so I got the book, and I would say this was probably there was two main things that caused me to really realize, and then God used those to kind of pierce my heart to go, I need to make a film. The first thing was this list. I'm going to just read you a few of these goals of the Communist Party from 1958, okay? In 1958, those of you that were alive then, think about what the world was like in 1958 in America. It's quite a bit different than it is today. But here's a few of these, and this made me realize the change had been a purposeful change. Goal number 17, get control of the schools, use them as transmission belts for socialism, soften the curriculum, get control of teachers' associations. That was a thoughtful goal in 1958. We've got to do this. Look what they've done. Goal number 24. These, to me, are so key because it made me, as I started to read through a few of these goals on moral things, it made me realize our enemy truly does understand that the greatness of America is our moral fabric, and that has to be destroyed. We don't understand it. We don't seem to understand that today as a people, but they understood it. Goal 24, eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. Isn't that what they've done? It's free speech. People can say whatever they want. You couldn't before. In America, they said, you don't have the freedom to talk filthy. That's not free speech. That's sin. In America, you're only free to do what is right. That was everything our founding fathers said. We want this to be the freest country in the world, not so you can do whatever you want to do, so that no man will be stopped from doing what is right. That was the only thing we were free to do. And they go on and on. If they ever use that freedom to have license to do what they want to do, America will be over. And that's what's happening. Goal number 25. Again, 50s, listen. Break down the cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. They knew if you get a pornographic society, which we have today, I can't take my sons anywhere. You can't go to the grocery store. You can't go to the mall. They've never been to a mall in their entire life. I can't take them in the mall. The way that people are dressed when you're in there, not only the windows of the stores, but the way they're dressed. We've been so desensitized because it's all so rotten. The cover of any woman's magazine today that's at every grocery stand in the world, that would have been in 1958 triple X pornography that would have put you in jail. Those covers, just the covers of the magazine, not even talking about what they're talking about on the cover, but that cover alone, that would have been indecent material. You would have been thrown in jail if you distribute that in any way in this country. Because they knew, no, that's going to destroy our culture. You start getting people into pornography, it's going to make the marriages fall apart. It's going to make their own lives fall apart. And so, but they knew that, and we didn't. Goal 26, if this isn't relevant, the last couple of years what's been going on. Goal 26, present homosexuality as normal, natural, and healthy. That's a radical goal in 1958 America. As natural, normal, and healthy. Isn't that exactly how it's presented today? It's good. It's not just, please accept us, let us do. We want to do this, let us do it. No, no, no. They're far past that. It's if you are not actively promoting us, you are the enemy and we will destroy you. I mean, that's where it's come. But that was what their goal was. This one really got my attention. Goal number 28. Because this had not happened when these goals, when Cleon Skousen penetrated the different communist cells in America as an FBI agent. He was an FBI and started listening. What are they talking about? When he heard them talking about this goal, it had not been accomplished yet. It was 4 years later that it was accomplished, but it was accomplished almost word for word. What the goal was is what our Supreme Court said from their little pulpits there. Number 28, eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the ground that it violates the principles of separation of church and state. And that's exactly what the Supreme Court said. This violates the separation of church and state, word for word what this goal had said 4 years before. Anyway, just on and on. Discredit the family as an institution. Have to destroy the family. And they have to destroy the Bible. It goes on in the church. But when I read that, again, I didn't read that. I wasn't alive in 1958. I could not believe our enemy had given us a list of their goals, of what they wanted to do, in very specific detail. They're not vague goals. All 45, we have a book back there that goes through each one of them and how they've accomplished all 45 of them today. And some of them were as simple as, we want to have free trade status with Red China. We get everything from Red China today. That was radical in the 50s. We would never do commerce with a communist country and prop them up so they can continue to abuse their people. I thought we were for freedom here. Don't kid yourself. America has 1 billion slaves. We just don't have to look at them. But they are working for us. And they were over there being abused and tortured so we can have cheap junk at Walmart. But that shook me up, and I said, you know what? This is serious. That means we really do have an enemy. And regardless of how convincing they have been in teaching us and telling us they no longer exist, they're liars. Because you cannot have a goal, a list of 45 goals that were all radical. When I interviewed Ed Meese, the Attorney General for Ronald Reagan, he's in the first movie. When I interviewed him, I said, Mr. Meese, did you read Cleon Skousen's book, The Naked Communist, when it first came out? He goes, absolutely, it was a classic. I said, now when you read through those 45 current communist goals in there, what'd you think? And he said, the same thing Phyllis Schlafly said, and M. Stanton Evans said, and Dr. David Noble, and all the people. I asked them each this question. They said, we thought that will never happen in America. But then each of them, very soberly and of their own will, turned to me, flushed red, beat red in the face, and said, and yet they've all happened in our lifetime. They were the most crazy list of goals. We looked at that and go, what are they talking about? That's just, that's a 500-year plan or something for America. We're not going to buy into all this stuff. And we bought into every single one. And that's why we are where we are today. So that is where Agenda 1 came from. God convicted my heart. I had never made a film before, didn't know anything about film, but I knew that material that I'd come across, it has to be in a film format because most people don't read today like they should. And I felt God wanted me to do that. And one lesson in that before we go into the next part of it is, I'm just telling you, when God asks you to do something, obey. We are so grateful that we obeyed. Our entire life has changed for the better. Our circle of influence has gone out 1,000,000-fold from what it was before we made the film. And we're like, God knew all that. We didn't. But we obeyed, and I'm so grateful that we did. Always obey, no matter what He asks you to do. You do it no matter what. Even if it doesn't turn out right. It's always turning out right because it doesn't turn out the way we like sometimes, but he uses everything for his glory and honor. And so don't forget that. This talk, which I'm just giving little bits and pieces of it because it's too long for the time we have, but the purposeful, premeditated treason of our country. The revolution many people are concerned about, they're worried about that's coming down the road one day. I want you to know it's already past us. We're in the midst of a revolution in this country, and we are losing. It's not something's going to happen one day. If we don't watch out, something's going to happen. No. It has been going on hardcore level since the 1930s. It was even before, 1883 is when it really started going, but 1930s is when it really started to just snowball. Behind the scenes, where we didn't notice that much change, just a little bit each year, just 1% or 2, but now we look 80 years later, and it was a little step a year, but when you're taking little steps every year for 80 years in a row, you can travel a lot of distance, and that's what's happened. Another key point people need to understand is our enemy has a plan, okay? I mean, they are thoughtfully strategic, purposefully destructive, masterful in their deceit, and satanic in their dedication to eliminate everything that is good and right and true. The battle we are in is, very simply put, God or man. There's only 2 choices. There's not 10. You do things God's way, and he blesses you, and you have an abundance of joy and peace and safety and blessings. Or you do it man's way, and there's 1,000 different flavors of doing it man's way. But every single time it ends in destruction. Every single time people suffer, lives are destroyed, and his institutions, the family, the church, and the state start crumbling from the purpose they were made for in their proper jurisdictions. Agenda 2 gets into this briefly, but it's a key point since most of you have not seen that. 2,500 years ago, there was a man named Sun Tzu who wrote a book called The Art of War. And that book is still one of the primary training manuals at all our military academies. It is a work of art on strategy and warfare. And he said, I was reading that, he said in there, if you know yourself, you will win the battle 50% of the time. If you know your enemy, you will win the battle 50% of the time. But if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you will win 100% of the time. And as I thought about that, I realized, you know what? In America, we don't know either one. We don't know who we are. We don't have a clue what we are founded upon, or what's our greatness and who we are. And we do not understand our enemy, any of the many different ones that are out there. We're not allowed to talk about them. Political correctness has tied our tongues. We can't even expose evil. We cannot even identify an enemy that is trying to destroy us. If you're in the military today, even as a commanding officer, and you use the word Islam in any sentence where you're talking about terrorism or any, you will be immediately court-martialed and you are done forever. Instantly. One of my good friends trains all the officers' strategy at the Pentagon, and he says they go through all of my presentations before I give them and whitewash them all. I can't even show a picture of someone that looks like they could be Islamic, or I said, you will never work here again. You're fired. And so when our top generals and stuff can't even say anything, and then our boys over there, they don't even know who they're fighting. You can't say who you're fighting or what you're fighting for or what the real enemy is. No wonder we have so many of them coming back so troubled. 22 of them every day that are coming back commit suicide every day. You can't go fight and kill and strive for something when you don't know what you're doing. It's a great burden to kill, even in the cause of total justice and righteousness. But if you didn't know what you're even doing or who you're fighting and you're having to do that, that's too much to bear, especially if you're a lost man. You can't handle that. you had to kill these people, but you weren't even sure what for. Was it really necessary? And was it, you know, that confusion? It's just devastating, and it's wrong. Here's a quick little thing from the second movie. How many have seen Agenda 2? Okay, just a few of you there. Okay, this is a short little clip from that. If someone wants to hit that like.
You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay. There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
And this is the point I think Americans need to comprehend. If America goes down economically, it will go down militarily. If America goes down militarily, we all go down. The free world is finished, and it will be finished for a very, very long time.
Everything, practically, is in a self-destructive mode.
We're in the most critical period we've been since the Revolutionary War.
You're not alert, you're not awake with what's happening.
They would just as soon see this country on its knees and everything equalized.
That concept, collectivism, big government, is a magnet for the predator class.
The plans for all of this are to have everything globally in place by 2020.
If we're that dumb, and we allow this to happen,
We deserve everything we're going to get, because we're going to get it right in the neck.
We're headed into what could be a nightmare that would make all the atrocities of the 20th century look like they were a dress rehearsal.
When people are afraid, they ask government to do more, not less.
their theories are designed to scare the people to believe there's a crisis when there is not a crisis at all. There's no crisis.
I think we are losing more and more freedom because we are afraid.
The left wants you to believe that catastrophe is always just around the corner. And the only way to avoid it is to do exactly what they say. But this film will show everything they do is just a Trojan horse of deceit, carefully crafted to advance their real agenda of finishing America off.
We have been the main stumbling block to world communism since it first raised its ugly head.
From the promotion of Islam to the propaganda of climate change, from the deceit of Common Core to the manufactured economic crisis, and from their manipulation of the evangelical church to the unsustainable debt burden. This film will show the issues are simply being used as a smokescreen to hide the purposeful, premeditated, treasonous attacks on the foundations of our freedom.
The world religion has just purged us from being able to determine right from wrong.
You know what Alexander Solzhenitsyn said about Russia? How the communists took over Russia? He said, "We forgot God."
Their stated agenda, carved in stone on a monument in Georgia and outlined in documents placed in the Ark of Hope, is to eliminate 6.5 billion people by century's end. And they will succeed if we don't stop them.
This is not just a fight for the United States of America. This is a fight for civilization itself.
It's everything Karl Marx dreamed of before our very eyes.
I think they've pushed us over the cliff in every sense. America isn't going to fall. We are falling.
So that's the second film, a little preview of that. And I'm just going to get to a few things here, as much little tidbits as I can in the time we have, because there really is a lot going on. In 1999, the BBC had a poll to determine who was the greatest thinker of the last 1,000 years. Not 100, 1,000, that's a long time. Think in your mind how you might think. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because what did Sun Tzu say? You have to know your enemy, or you have no clue what's going on if you don't understand it. Well, make a long story short, Karl Marx was voted the most influential person of the last 1,000 years, and I think they're right. I mean, the world, he has had more influence than anyone I can think of in modern times, in hundreds of years. I mean, we've been told that communism is dead, the Cold War is over, and all that stuff, but as you dig in and look at the philosophies and ideas that are being taught, the word communism is dead, but everything behind it is alive and well. It's being taught in all of our universities, Christian or secular. It's just around the world. It's not just America either. That's the problem. This is the idea. Marxism is this simple. And people are like, what? It's this simple. It's the concept that the good of the many outweigh the good of the few. If you believe that concept, you have been indoctrinated with Marxism. That's the foundation of the whole thing. The good of the many outweigh the good of the few. You think, well, that doesn't sound too bad. It's horrible. If you study how, when that is implemented in a society, what happens. What always happens when you're looking about the good of the many is there's minority groups that are able to be abused or fall through the cracks, and it ends in slaughter. And you're also a sitting duck, because how does anyone know what's necessary for the good? I mean, you live in one city in one place. All they have to do is tell you what's best for America is that we cut carbon emissions. And you're like, my town, there doesn't seem to be any problem with that, but okay, I guess the good of the many outweighs the good of the few. It makes you sitting ducks for propaganda because you don't know what's going on, so they can tell you what's going on. But when it's implemented, it ends in slaughter every time. Hundreds of millions just in the 20th century. We don't have to go that far at all back to see what has happened. And so, but that's what's taught, and it's being bought. People are really believing it. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. They're believing. The Christian community is believing that's a biblical concept. It is not. And this is the thing too, the naive young people that love Bernie, that think, man, socialism sounds great, and it does. It sounds wonderful. But they're ignorant of history, so they don't understand what it is, first of all, and they don't understand this as most adults don't understand this concept. If you study history, you can't stop the train at socialism. Socialism will always end in communism. You know why? Because socialism doesn't work. And so there's a point they have to get the guns out and say, work, or we're putting a bullet in your head. Because it starts crumbling when everyone's naturally lazy, naturally self-serving, and when you have a system that says, regardless of how hard you work, you get paid the same. Regardless of what you do, you get paid the same. You get paid for existing. When that happens, it slowly starts crumbling. You run out of money because people stop working so hard because there's no self-motivation there to do it. And it slowly starts crumbling and crumbling. So there's a point where that big government, when it wants to stay in power, realizes there's not much money coming in anymore. Okay? We got to get out the guns. We have to make them do what they won't do because we want the money to keep coming in to keep us able to do what we're doing, living like kings. And so it happens every time. You're going to see this in Europe. You're going to watch over the next 20 years all of Europe collapse. Completely. All of it. Why? Because socialism doesn't work. And when you reject God or rebellion against Him, He will destroy you. Period. And so they have rejected the blessing of children. They're all at 1.5 children or less per couple. And you have to have 2.1 just for a society to stay stagnant. You have to have 2.1 children per every woman or to stay stagnant. And right now, today, 115 different countries and territories in the world are not having that. 115 are dying off. They're slowly dying off. So you reap what you sow, no matter how hard you believe you don't want to. And what's going to happen, we're going to get a preview in Europe. The euthanasia is going to start escalating. They're already doing it hiddenly by the Liverpool pathway is what they call it in London. Once you get put on the Liverpool pathway, you're dead in 3 days. But you don't know what happened to you. They give you painkillers, cut everything off, and don't tell your family what's happened. I watched the documentary on that, interviewing some doctors that were honest enough about it. They said, we don't have the money to take care of these people. So even if we wanted to, we can't. We don't, in a socialist medical system, we don't have the money. So we have to do this to them, and we're peacefully letting them just die off. We don't have money to take care of them. Well, that's what's going to be happening with Obamacare and everything else. Once they get control of that, again, even if they didn't want to, that's the thing most people don't get, the average liberal mind, well, they wouldn't do that. They have to do that. Even if they were well-intentioned, they have to. Why? Because you run out of money. When the waste that will be in medicine beyond what it's already been, when government takes it over, there'll be so little money to go around, you'll be waiting, and they'll do it nicely. If you're older, having a problem, we'll put you on the waiting list, but of course that waiting list will always be extending out, so it's not going to take, you're not going to take advantage of it in your lifetime, because they're like, we're not wasting one dime on that guy. Once you're past the productive years, if you're not paying a high level of tax each year, you have no value to them. Zero. Get rid of them. We're not giving them anything. And it's already happening in America. This isn't new. 4 years ago in Oregon, I'm from Idaho, 4 years ago, a lady that had worked for the state of Oregon her whole life, she retired. She was just like 62, so not that old. She got a cancer, a very curable form of cancer. She went to the state of Oregon, which is further down the road than America. They're a socialist state. But she went to get her treatment. And they said, we've had a bad economic year. We can't afford it for the treatment. It costs $500,000 whatever for your chemo. We can't do it. You have a choice. Painkillers or doctor-assisted suicide, which is legal there. And that's it. They would not pay for it. They said, we're not paying for that. We don't have the money. So she got her work there for 40 years and put her retirement away. No, I'm sorry, we don't have the money for that foolishness. So that's where it's coming. So it's where it always happens. Now here, again, understanding the enemy, give you a few little nuggets of that, is the greatest Marxist thinker of the 20th century was a man named Vladimir Lenin, who was the founder of the Soviet Union. He was a genius. You read his stuff and you realize the Saul Alinsky's and all those guys, they plagiarized him. They didn't come up with anything. It's all straight from Lenin. He was a genius of strategy, and they simply repackaged it and act like it was their book, but it's his ideas. He said this. He gave us a key piece of the puzzle of what they do. He said this: the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. Now think about that for a minute. You go, well, how do you do that? You do that by infiltration, subversion. You rise up and you turn things from within. That is what's happened to the Christian church in America. The film gets into it in detail. They started penetrating our seminaries and divinity schools in the 1930s. It was they said some of the top communist leaders that defected to America after they saw Stalin's slaughter, our Congress questioned them before Congress in 1953, said, what's going on with the Communist Party? And they said, what have you been doing and what are you planning to do? And they said our main objective since the last 35 years has been getting to seminaries and divinity schools. We want to teach the pastors so we control religion, our Christianity, which is our main enemy, and then we can use it for our own means. And you go, well, they couldn't do that. Today in America, it's very close to 90% of our seminaries, evangelical seminaries, do not believe the Bible is in their Word of God. That's 90% of our seminaries. They've been very successful, if you're into question on that. And that's why the evangelical church is floundering like a drunken sailor. Because most of the men in the pulpit, they're not saved. They don't know Jesus Christ. They haven't been regenerated. And then most of the people in the pew are sitting there with their cappuccino and having a good time listening to the rock concert or whatever. They're not regenerate men that love holiness. When you get saved, God changes you. You know truth from error because He is inside you, the Holy Spirit. You're instantly pro-life. You cannot be pro-choice and be saved. Can you have an abortion and be saved? Of course you can. We can sin at any level. But you can't be adamantly fighting for sin, saying there's nothing wrong with that. You can't do that because you have the Holy Spirit in you. Now again, you could have an abortion, but if I came to you and said, you shouldn't have done that, you'll go, I know, but I didn't know what else to do, and it was terrible, and I fell into it. It's like if you were committing adultery, I'd come to you, you wouldn't say, there's nothing wrong with that. You cannot that's define who you are, who you've become through Jesus Christ indwelling in you. And so we look at the church, and I realize, and as I've traveled, been in 43 states in just recent time, The church is filled with lost people. That's why we're no different than the world. Our stats on divorce, our stats on our children, losing our children. It's worse than the world in most categories. Why? Because it's lost men. They're actually not saved. That's why they're not different than the world. They're a twin. They love the world. They look like the world. They talk like the world. They listen to the world's music. They watch the world's movies. They're obsessed with the world. Well, when you see that, you have to go, you can tell by looking at them, they love the world. Well, Jesus told us, he goes, if you love the world, the things that are in the world, the love of the Father's not in you. You're not saved. You can't do that. Again, you can stumble into any sin as a Christian, but you know you did it when you did it. You're heartbroken, like, man, I shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. It was evil. I shouldn't have done that. But that's not what we see today. We see an open, offensive promotion of evil even inside the church. There's nothing wrong with that. The Bible never said that. How dare you talk about that? And so we see, it's lost men. So that's why it looks like that. But the crime of that is, if lost men want to get together and play church, I don't care. Except to the world, that makes Christianity, that looks like that's what it is. That's what's terrible about it. So it makes Jesus look bad. And that's evil. Anything that makes him look bad is evil. And that's why we have to be so different. We have to be the salt and the light. We have to be shining differently and kind and loving and diligent and thankful and just a blessing to those around us. So why? So when we share the gospel with them, it all makes sense. Because they go, you are different. I go, yes, I am. I'm not perfect. But I'm different since I met Jesus. And it makes Jesus then look good. We're not supposed to be looking good. He's supposed to be looking good. That's the key to the whole thing. So many things here. I bet you're going to have to watch the movie Agenda 2 on some of this. I met some interesting people from the Soviet Union that met with me. After making Agenda 1, I started to get calls from intelligence officers, retired, from CIA, FBI, KGB, that were retired now, and good people. They were good ones. And they said, we saw your film. I got invited to lunches in different places in different cities. Come, we want to meet with you and tell me who they are. And I went and met, and they started talking. They said, what you're saying is just a tip of the iceberg. We've been in the middle of that battle for 50 years. And we couldn't have the time to say what was going on. They would let us and on and on. And I got to know a lot of them were Christians too, neat men that were retired now, intelligence officers from every branch of the military. But they introduced me to some very interesting people, KGB agents and things that had a lot of incredible information. And some of it's in the movies I had time to put in there. But of this battle we are in, it really is, it's against Satan is the game. He's their commander-in-chief. That's why it's so coordinated, so consistent, so purposeful, and never misses a beat. There's not one good thing or righteous thing it's not attacking. It knows. And a sinful man couldn't be that 100% perceptive. So he's their commander-in-chief, and he knows what God's way of doing things, and he's trying to flip everything on its head. But we have a commander-in-chief, if you didn't realize. And ours is a lot smarter than theirs. Okay? He crushed theirs like a little ant crawling on the pulpit. But we don't follow him. We don't have the time. We're not doing what he would have us to do. We're busy doing the things of the world. We're just wasting our time, our precious time. Time is the most precious thing we are ever given. And yet, we never know how much is left. And we don't know when the last minute's going to be. And most of the time we waste all of it. And we can't do that anymore. It's too much serious things going on. I'm going to go through some of these. It talks about with Islam, what's going on, some interesting things. I'll just tell you this. Marxism and Islam are hand in glove all over the world. One of the KGB guys, Alexander Litvinenko, he was the man that was poisoned by Putin with radioactive plutonium-210. You might remember that story. Before he died in London, he told us some key things. He said, listen, the terrorist attacks against against Russia, like the apartment buildings that were blown up and stuff, he said, we did them. KGB blew those up to make it look like we were against radical Islam. They didn't do that. We did that. We just wanted to look like, see, we're being attacked too. We're in this with you. He goes, we arm, finance, train, fund all terrorism worldwide and have for over 60 years. That's our whole. We have training camps for them to come train and to teach them and or get them organized. Because they're not very organized, we help organize and coordinate what they're doing to make them very effective at creating chaos. Because we love chaos. When there's chaos, people will accept anything that they would never normally accept because, oh, save me, help me. And so, but on and on they went. Educational system. I hope you know it's bankrupt. It's corrupt to the core. Even without Common Core, it's shot and it's destroying the hearts and minds and souls of our children. Okay? And we've allowed that, and it's one of those things that even as Christians, we reap what we have sown. There's no way around that. But we can repent, and we can ask for forgiveness, and God forgives anything like that. And we can then go in the opposite direction. If you lost your children, and you realize, I didn't teach and train them like I should, dear God, please forgive me. And it's gone forever when He's paid the price for something. But then repentance is not asking forgiveness. Repentance is doing the opposite. So what do? God, would you help me have the opportunity to invest in more young people till the day I die? I'm sorry for blowing it with my children. Thank you for forgiving me for that. But now help me, whether it's with my own grandchildren or neighbors or church kids, help me to impact young people's lives with the truth. Not for fun and games, with the truth. Would you please help me? I want to repent of what I've done. And He will help you. I promise you. Schools corrupt to the core. John Dewey, who was the founder of our government schools, he was a founding member of the Socialist Society of America. He was a founding member of the American Civil Liberties Union. And in case you probably know that's not good, but it's more than not good. The American Civil Liberties Union was started by a man named Roger Baldwin. Roger Baldwin, when asked, what's the point of the ACLU when it first started, he goes, the goal is communism, unquote. And if there's any question to his authenticity, the office for the ACLU, its first many years in existence, was in the Communist Party headquarters in New York City. Their office was in the Communist Party headquarters. So we are getting exactly what they wanted us to get. A dumbed down, useful idiot child that will be so uncombative, so just beaten to a pulp and just not capable of even questioning what's going on. They'll just do what they're told. And that's what it was designed to do, though. We are so naive to think, well, we all the time excuse the other side, and I even catch myself all the time going, man, those Democrats or those liberals, wherever, they just don't get it. They don't understand economic policy. Why are they pushing that? It's not going to help the economy. Or they don't get education, man. They've been trying these policies for 50 years and it keeps going downhill. Or they don't get this, or they're in a fantasy world, or we're in a fantasy world. They're not. They are geniuses of strategy. They know exactly what they are doing. It is a purposeful, premeditated destruction of our educational system, destruction of the economy, destruction of our entertainment, destruction of our media and information. It's purposeful. We so legitimize them when we act like they're just ignorant people. They don't get it. Those people, they know exactly what they're doing. The leaders that are implementing the policy, a lot of the people at the local level, no, they're not. They don't get it at all, unfortunately. Or they would rise up and go, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense what you're doing. We keep pushing the programs you tell us to push, and it doesn't improve things like you said it would. Why not? Well, but they don't do that. Environmental movement, real quick, a couple key nuggets. This is the movement that will create the world government. Okay? You have to be educated on the environmental movement. The good news is there's tons of great books out there. And as you dig in and study even briefly, it's a very easy battle on one respect because everything they're preaching is a lie. There's no well-meaning heart behind it. Let's help the environment. It has nothing to do about the environment. The very policies they are pushing are about the most destructive thing you could possibly do if you really cared about the environment, and especially if you cared about human beings that live here in the environment. So it's complete hoax. And here's one nugget I want you to have because it's important. The foundation of the entire environmental movement is this. CO2 is a pollutant, right? I mean, that's everything is about the CO2 footprint. I mean, that's the foundation of it. There's some other planks in there, but that's it. Well, that's almost laughable if it wasn't so deadly. CO2 literally is plant food. It's fertilizer for plants. It is the greatest single element in the entire atmosphere for everything that is green. Isn't it interesting they call their movement the green movement? And here's the thing. Right now, the levels of CO2 in the world are 425 parts per million. Okay, we're at 425 parts per million. You know what the optimum CO2 level is for everything that is green? 1,600 parts per million. We're at 1/4 of the optimum level for everything that is green. That's why greenhouses pump CO2 in there all day long. So everything that is green will explode. It grows every time you double CO2. Plant growth efficiency increases 35%. So you get 35% more oranges on your orange tree, 35% more corn with the same field. It's a blessing. If we could pump CO2 levels up 2 or 3 times, we'd have so much food we wouldn't know what to do with it. And the green oak tree, instead of taking 100 years to get this big, would take about 40 years to get that big. If we could pump it up to where it's big. It's a total lie, as everything they preach is. And we have to know that, though. So we don't just naively buy into this, well, they're saving the planet. That sounds noble. Jesus would have wanted to save the planet. And Jesus already saved the planet. In case you didn't wonder. It doesn't need to be saved. Okay, but listen to that. Do you understand that? Think of all you hear every day. Media, movies, CO2 footprint. Whoever has the biggest CO2 footprint is the most green person on the planet. It literally is that crazy. And they flipped it exactly on its head, which they always do because they are masters of deceit. Do you know why they flip it exactly opposite instead of just a little lie? Because it's a form of brainwashing. When everything is the exact opposite of the truth, your mind has a hard time functioning. It can't discern truth from error anymore. When you've been taught that all growing up K through 12, you can't. It's too big a step. If they were just little lies and you expose them, they'd say, oh, okay, it's really like this. But when it's the opposite, a young person to tell them CO2 is plant food. They can't accept that from you. When everything they've heard in their entire life, the cartoons on Saturday morning, everything, the movies they go to, the news in the evening, so they walk by the set while they're just going to the kitchen, they hear CO2 levels, we've got to cut them down, or everything they're hearing, and you say that, they can't accept that. It's like saying the sun doesn't exist or something. Right? Everyone has told me it is, so you're the idiot. You look like the fool to them instead of the one telling them the truth, because it's a form of brainwashing. In 1984, the book by George Orwell, anybody read that? It's a classic. It came out in 1948. But in that book, it was called Doublethink. And they considered doublethink to be successful if everyone in the totalitarian society believed everything was the exact opposite of the truth. Freedom was slavery, and slavery was freedom. War was peace, and peace was war. And that was perfect brainwashing when that had happened. We are almost there. Everything has been flipped opposite, literally opposite, not just lies, it's total perversion of the truth. Which, of course, that's what Satan's going to do. He's the father of lies. He doesn't want anything even close to the truth, because Jesus Christ is the truth. So he hates anything that's remotely true. On and on it goes. But I tell you this, get educated on the environmental movement, because it's not going away ever. And we've got to be well-read so we can slowly pull people out of this coma of sustainability. Sustainability is about one thing: enslaving the world. There's no other agenda to it. There's no other purpose for it. That is all it is about. It is communism. It's repackaged in green wrapping to make it more appealing. That is all it is. And the movie gets into the key people and groups to show you that. And I won't get into that now. There's so many things. Got to watch the movie. Isn't that convenient of me? No, you really do. There's too much. We were warned by a man, a great man of the 19th century, what was going to happen. He saw these philosophies of Darwinism and Marxism start to percolate around in the late 1800s. And he warned us. How many of you have heard of a man named General William Booth? He's the founder of the Salvation Army. Listen to what he said over 120 years ago. The chief danger of the 20th century will be a religion without the Holy Spirit, Christianity without Christ, forgiveness without repentance, salvation without regeneration, politics without God, and heaven without hell. It's exactly where we are today. It's all been flipped on its head, very strategically, to have a society of complete confusion, where young people just, give me my iPhone. God, I can't even, it's confusing. Everything is just pushes their mind over the top so they won't listen to anything. And we get where we're going. The purposefulness of the inflation in America. And I have the quotes from the top people. Anybody ever heard of John Maynard Keynes? Keynesian economics, which we are all Keynesian economists today. Whether it's a Republican in there or a Democrat, they talk about how they're Keynesian economists. Well, he quotes I have there, he said, it's purposeful. If we create enough inflation, my grandfather's house cost $4,500. It was a beautiful Victorian home in South Bend, Indiana. $4,500. My father's home that I grew up in was a beautiful home on a lake in Florida. It was $45,000. My home today in Idaho is $450,000. Every 50 years, things go up 10 times in cost, so that they're stealing your wealth. He talks about, he goes, we're going to steal their wealth. They'll never know what happened, and it will make all of the women have to work whether they want to or not, so we'll get the children younger. And that was the point of it. They talked about it in detail 80 years ago, over and over again. We've got to create enough inflation where they just can't make it no matter how hard they're working, and we'll create more dependency, so they'll be more dependent on the government, because if we can make them dependent on the government, it guarantees their vote. They'll vote for us forever. Once you got the hook in you, you have to. I don't blame them. If you're a 16-year-old girl that has 3 children out of wedlock, you have to have that. The church isn't helping anymore. It's dropped out of society. You used to take care of the poor and the people that need it. Not anymore. They say, oh, let government do it. They'll save us the money. And it's not saving us any money, because when they help the poor, they enslave them in entitlements and destroy them forever. And that's what's happened. And we're reaping what we have sown. How many of you remember this picture? It's one of my favorites of all time. The tank man there was standing in front of these communist tanks coming in Tiananmen Square in 1989. If you remember that, 1989, college students were out there holding signs peacefully, asking for a little more freedom. Can we listen to a little of our music or talk about ideas? Or they weren't violent, they weren't out of control, asking for a little freedom. And the Chinese Communist government let them know what they think about freedom. They came in there with those tanks. This man, no matter where the tanks came, he just stood in front of them. They tried to cut around. He stood in front of them. He finally climbed up on top of one, and it was up there, and they finally took him out and executed him. With the other 3,000 students, they machine gunned down right in Tiananmen Square. And we still buy all our products from China. Isn't that encouraging? They really got rewarded for slaughtering their own people. Now listen. Total commitment is what we need. Here's the good news. We have the truth. They are pushing a lie. They have Satan. We have God. Okay? As I study Bible history, I've read through the Bible many, many, many times. And you see, whenever God allows evil to flourish, it's because he is punishing the righteous. He hates the evil worse than we do. Okay? But he allows it to, because he knows all evil will eventually be judged. There will be justice, so he's not fretting over, that guy got away with something. He knows there will be complete and absolute justice at the judgment of the seat of Christ. So he's not worried about that. They can, for a season, feel like they got away with something. They didn't get away with anything. But when he sees us, his people, his children, living like the world, we're not holy and separate and just different. He's like, my own children are paying attention. They need to be chastised. I'm going to allow evil to flourish and start putting pressure on them, Not because I'm mean, because I'm loving. I want to bring them back to where they're dependent on me, even when things are going good. America's been so blessed, we go like, why do we need God? I've got a pantry full of food, I've got a stack of money in the bank, I've got a nice home. And unfortunately, when we have all those things, instead of going, boy, has God been good to me, we think we got to handle ourselves. And so he finally has to go, I can't let you believe that because that's a lie. I must judge you and have you have consequences, and that's what he's done. Now, communism, I'm going to end with this story here. In Romania, an interesting story I came across as I've been studying communism for 10 years. In Romania, in December of 1989, the dictator was called a man named Ceausescu. And Ceausescu was one of the most ruthless communist dictators that we know of. And he gave the orders in December, a certain day, to have this one church bulldozed. He'd had many of them bulldozed, but there was a few left around here and there. Well, this one church, he said, go bulldoze it. And for some reason, this particular church, 25 members and their pastor, said, no, enough is enough. We are not going to let him bulldoze our church. And so they went and stood out in front of the church holding candles and just singing hymns. Bulldozers came up to bulldoze it, and they didn't know people were going to be there, so they weren't sure what to do. So they drove back. There was no cell phones in those days. Drove back to find out what's the orders. Ceausescu said, bulldoze it anyway. So they came back the next day. Well, the next day there's hundreds of people out there holding their candles and singing. And so they went back one last time, and then they came back. There was tens of thousands of people standing out there. Okay? And so the soldiers got the order. Ceausescu said, kill them. And so those communist soldiers started machine gunning down these Christians, but they wouldn't leave, even being machine gunned down. They said, you're not taking our church. They didn't run. They stood there and taking the bullets, just falling over dead. 500 of them fell over dead. And finally, God, because they were willing to sacrificially stand for the truth, you know what he did? He pierced the conscience of those lost communist soldiers, and all of a sudden they stopped. And they realized, we're killing our own people. And they turned those tanks, they drove back to the palace, they grabbed Ceausescu and his wife, they took them out and executed them that night, which was Christmas Eve of 1989. And the next morning, the paper in communist Romania said, the Antichrist is dead and Jesus is born. That's what God can do. No weapons, no power, no influence. They had nothing, but they had God on their side. They had courage, and they were willing to die for what they believed in. Are you? Are you really? You need to think about that. And if you're not, you need to get the things out of your life that are stopping you from being that committed. Jesus is worth it. And he knows none of us prefer to be tortured or killed like hundreds of thousands of wonderful Christians have been, our brothers and sisters in Christ all throughout time. Right now in China, do you know every day, an average day in the world, 500 Christians are executed just because they believe in Jesus. They've done no crime. That's the average day. Voice of the Martyrs keeps track of it best they can. The average day, 500 Christians are executed because they believe in Jesus Christ. Well, it might be coming to America at some point. And I'll tell you this, if we weren't standing for him when we're as free as we still are, you're not going to be standing for him when there's a gun at your head. You won't. Okay? It's time to get serious. But our God is in control, and he can bless. And here's the last thing, action I want to get you to do. Here. The key to our success is very, very simple. Very simple. It's one word to how we can have victory. You know what it is? Obedience. Obedience. If we were obeying the things we read in the Bible, if we were obeying what God has clearly told us to do in His Word, but even beyond that, then each day praying, God, what would you have me to do? What would you have me to do? If we did that, I think things would change very quickly. quickly. And he saw his children, just the remnant of them. Doesn't have to be every person that calls themselves a Christian, because most of them are not Christians. They are not. So we're not talking about them. We're talking about the people that truly are saved, that truly know Jesus Christ as their Savior, that have been their new creation. He's changed them from the inside out. That's who we're talking about. And if we did that, and then started asking him for commands, since he's our commander-in-chief, God, what would you have me to do? Where he was coordinating our efforts. He knit us together inside our mother's womb. He knows exactly what we were designed to do. Your strengths, your weaknesses, everything. Well, like I said before, we made this film because God asked us to. That's what he asked us. He'll ask you to do something different. But he blessed it. And a testimony, too, of something we don't do enough as a people, as a Christian people. We do not pray enough, and we do not fast and pray together enough. Think of the last time you have fasted and prayed for a day, or multiple days, asking God for something burning your heart so heavy that you go, God, please help with this. Children, grandchildren, our country, whatever. We need to do that. Well, when I first felt we were supposed to make this film, I told the children, I think God wants to make us a film. I think God wants us to make a film. And they said, Daddy, why don't this Friday, why don't we fast and pray that your film wins this big film festival in San Antonio, Texas, they'd heard about, that had the largest cash prize film festival in America. It was right here in San Antonio. It was a Christian one. I said, okay. I mean, I haven't bought a camera yet. I don't have a story or whatever, but I just feel like I'm supposed to make a film. And so we fasted and prayed that Friday. The next Friday, I went down to get breakfast out, and my daughter said, Daddy, it's Friday. We're going to fast and pray your film wins the festival. I said, oh, I didn't realize that was this week too. And they said, Daddy, it's every week until it wins the festival. And to make a long story short, this is your God too if you're saved. Listen, for 22 months, every Friday, our family fasted and prayed that a film we didn't know what we were doing, never made a film for, would win the largest cash prize film festival in America. Just watch this clip, this minute clip here.
In 2007, I was a state representative, and I had no idea the things I would discover about why America was collapsing from within would motivate me to take my life savings and make a film. And I had never made a film before. During the 2 years it took to finish the project, my children prayed daily that it would win the largest single cash prize film festival in America, which in my thinking was a mighty tall order. But of course, it wasn't for God.
The 2010 $101,000 grand prize for Best of Festival goes to Agenda!
God is so good. I'd like to thank him for just the wonderful wife he gave me. I don't think any man can even reach a fraction of his potential if he doesn't have the woman with him that God intended him to have for life. And I want to thank her. Kids, I'm giving this to you so you'll always remember God does answer prayers. Thank you so much.
God can do the impossible. We can't, but he can. Our family always talks about it in these terms, and I'll leave you with this. I'm done. Whatever you have, give it to him like the little boy that had the loaves and fishes. And say, God, you feed the 5,000. This is everything I have. That the day we finished Agenda, we got down and he said, God, here's our loaves and fishes. You do something with it. We can't do anything with it. And over 10 million people have come to free showings that we've had. He's used it all over the place. He's expanded our circle of influence. That's what He's done. We haven't done that. I didn't know 100 people before this film. But that's what He does. Give Him your loaves and fishes. Well, I got one loaf. Give me your one loaf. He didn't take anything. He can take nothing, but He always takes something. That's what I've learned in life too. He never does the impossible by Himself. He could, but He has chosen to use us. He is so kind, so loving, so wonderful. He said, I'm going to use these imperfect humans that I love and I died for, and I'm allowed them to be part of what I am doing. But if we're not doing anything, it's a shame. So I encourage you, give it to Him. Give Him your loaves and fishes, and ask Him to bless it. Say, God, you bless this, and you do something great with it. And He will, I promise you, He will. Thank you, Pastor.